Well, welcome. My name is Steve Gauck. I'm the Regional Agronomy Manager in the East for Beck's. And I'm with Beck's a little bit over 19 years, a seed advisor, agronomist, now in this role, and it's been a great ride watching PFR grow, watching Beck's grow, and today I'm excited to bring you some information about spraying for profit in soybeans. And really when we think about spraying, we think of it as being reactionary, right? I've got a weed pressure, I've got diseases, so we make a reaction to go out and spray. But what if we step back and we said, when I go out and make those applications, what are things I can do to become more profitable? And those are things we're going to touch on today. So first, we're going to talk about timing. And we talk a lot about timing of spray in PFR. Many of you have heard that. But again, I think it's important to reiterate that out of 7 years of data, we see that spraying soybeans at R3 is our most profitable time. You'll see over the 7 years, we've averaged over $17. And now, a lot of you say, well, Steve, I've sprayed fungicides and I haven't had the success that you show in PFR. Well, look at the data for R2 and R4. What if you were off a little bit? That consistency of spraying at R3 has been really important. Why is that? Well, approximately 70% of our yield comes from nodes 6 through 13 on that soybean plant. At R3, nodes 6 through 13 are exposed. So when we make that fungicide application, we cover all those trifoliates that affect those nodes. Now, fungicide doesn't necessarily translocate through the plant very well, but it'll translocate through the leaves. So if we can protect the yield of nodes 6 through 13, that's where we see this profit coming and why the timing of R3 is so important. The biggest question I get, what is R3? So when you take a soybean plant and you look at the top 4 nodes, and really we're looking at the top 4 nodes with a trifoliate that is fully developed. So ultimately that means that the leaves aren't touching anymore. Once we find that, we look at those 4 nodes and we look for a pod that's at least 3/16 of an inch long. So it's a small pod, but somewhere in those 4 nodes, if we can find that pod at that length, we know we're at the beginning of R3. Next question I get is, well, how long does R3 last? Well, depending on GDUs, growing conditions of that season, normally we get about 10 days. Now, some of you go, well, man, I can't spray all my beans in 10 days. That may be true, but think about this. Your planting date is scattered. Your maturity range of your soybeans is also different. So you are actually naturally widening that window of R3 for your entire operation, giving you the opportunity to get the right timing on each of your fields. So it just takes a little bit of scouting and planning, and you can stay ahead of it. Now here's some more data that I thought was kind of interesting, is we've looked at different timings, right? Is this R3 always going to be consistent? Especially as we see more disease pressure, we see more fungicide options. So here you'll see back in 2019, we went out, we sprayed at R2 and at R4, make a double application. Then we sprayed R3, which we know is PFR Proven, and said let's spray late at R5 and see if we can help that grain fill period. Well, all of them actually increased yield. But again, in a year like this, we're looking at profitability. And it comes back to that R3 timing, one application is still our most profitable. Well, then we looked again at it and said, well, in corn, we've seen some advantages of spraying earlier in the season. Let's try it on soybeans. We made a V4 application, our R3, and then went in and made our V4 followed by an R3 application. Here again, we were able to increase yields, but from a profitability standpoint, it comes back to the R3 is still that most important and critical timing. Now this is interesting. I get the question a lot about planting dates. Well, I've planted beans late. I may have limited my yield potentials. It's still worth putting a fungicide on. So we looked at it. Here I'm looking at some Kentucky data where we planted in April, May, and June. And what we thought was really interesting when you look at these numbers is the growing degree units it took from planting to flowering. Now we know beans compensate really well for the situation they're in, and sometimes that's what makes them hard to manage or hard to understand. So here you'll see our April planting date, it took 962 growing degree days to reach flowering. But we went to June, it only took 687. So a big difference there, right? That bean is compensating with the sunlight, moving reproductively quicker. Well, how did that affect applications of fungicide? Well, here you'll see we sprayed in April, May, and June. You'll see the populations go up, right? That's PFR recommended that as we plant later, we have to force more nodes per acre. Soybeans aren't getting as much vegetative growth, so we up that population to make up for that. But here you'll see it was profitable to spray at R3 at every planting date, but it was most profitable the later. So if we look at that late planting date, we've really got to think about, okay, there's more disease pressure. It's usually hotter and more humid. So we have to protect that soybean. And here you see that in PFR, it's been shown, this is 1 year data, that late bean really reacts to a fungicide application. Now we kind of move through the season, we think about time of day. So when we're going out there, we're going to make a fungicide application on soybeans or even a herbicide application. Does time of day have an effect? Well, through our PFR data, you see here that dew on the leaves has become very important. Well, why is that? You think about in the morning, there's dew on that leaf. We've got to use a carrier of water to apply fungicide. There's water already there. Really, we think about that heavy dew gives us about 160 gallons of carrier rate. That allows when we make that fungicide application to hit that leaf, spread out easily across it. Stomatas are open at that time. It's usually cooler. We're pulling that fungicide into the plant more efficiently and getting the opportunity to utilize it. So as see here, it's PFR proven to spray at 8 a.m. with dew on the leaves. Now there's about a $5 advantage to spraying in the afternoon. And you say, well, $5, you know, is that worth it? Well, we're trying to make every dollar we can. And think about this. Even at 3 p.m., it was still more profitable than no fungicide. But if we really want to maximize our spraying and spraying for profit, why not spray our fungicides in the morning when we get our biggest return, and then focus on herbicides in the afternoon, where herbicides utilize the heat for better weed control. Now we think about carrier rate and how much water should we use. And sometimes for a lot of us, this is a struggle, right? I got to haul more water to the field. It takes more time. It takes more fill-ups. But what's the advantage of carrier rate? When we look here in soybeans, it's PFR proven to apply 20 gallons of water. So I think a little bit of it about taking a shower, right? If you've got only 10 gallons a minute, a small shower head, it takes a lot more water and time to wash the soap out of your hair. Or if you have more water and more pressure, you get better coverage. Even in our PFR plots, when we go walk them, 15 gallon versus 20, when you open that canopy up and you look down in there, it's amazing the disease control we get with 20 gallon because that water is going all the way down in that canopy. So just by adding some more water, which is usually one of our lowest cost inputs, an $8 an acre increase. So basically with the price of soybeans today, that's probably even better. So more water is beneficial to increasing your profitability. Now each year we test fungicides in our PFR system and have a lot of great fungicides. Here you'll see a lot of the proven products, right? Trivapro, Delaro, Headline Amp, great products. They're all PFR proven. What about for this year? We've got some new ones. Lucento and Miravis Neo are both PFR proven for corn and soybeans. We see a nice return. Over here on the right, you see Miravis Top. A really big return there. It's focused mainly on soybeans. It's very good on frog eye leaf spot. So as we look from Indiana south, we have more frog eye pressure. This product really comes to the top with a high ROI. So that's really where I'm going to focus it more though, is those frog eye areas. But the thing I want to point out is what we're learning in PFR that I think is interesting is that yes, all these products are PFR proven, but what makes them PFR proven? If you've noticed on both slides, every PFR proven fungicide is multiple modes of action. To me, that is really what's becoming PFR proven. It's not necessarily the fungicide itself, but the fact you're using multiple modes of action for better control. We talk a lot about that in herbicides for better weed control. Same situation here for better disease control and plant health in your soybeans. I want to focus a little bit now on foliar nutrition. So a lot of us are making applications throughout the season of different nutrients. And PFR is starting to teach us the when and the why of what nutrients we should be using. So these are PFR proven products that have been in our lineup for a while, but I want you to really kind of focus in on a couple. The Max-N Ultra Manganese and the Versamax Manganese are both PFR proven at V4. They're the only products in soybeans that are really proven at that time. So that tells me PFR has taught us that soybeans need manganese at V4. Now if I jump over here to the Versamax soybean, the Versamax all crop, you'll see there that at R1 in soybeans, those are PFR proven. So that tells me as we're going into pod set, flowering, that there's a huge advantage to having a micro pack of nutrients to fill those trifoliates and give that plant everything it needs as it's starting to set pods and go into grain fill. So again, we think about PFR Proven. What is it teaching us? It's the when, why, and what we need at certain times of a plant's growth stage. This year, we've added a few new to PFR Proven. We jump over here to the BRANDT Smart B-Mo and the BRANDT Smart Quatro Plus. Right, they're boron products. So we think about making a boron application at R3 seems to be showing the opportunity that that's what that plant needs as we're going into grain fill. Water conditioning. So have you ever really considered how your water source affects your spray solution? Whether it's a pesticide, fungicide, foliar nutrition, water makes up the highest percent of the solution that touches your plants. Water sources vary from region to region, so they offer sometimes different antagonistic properties that reduce the effectiveness of that spray solution. A lot of that has to do with pH and the hardness of water. So we've done some studies in PFR on that. Here you'll see our water only on our PFR sites averaged around 7.4 as a pH. When we add Versamax AC, which is a PFR proven product, we actually raise the pH of that water. So to be more effective, we need to keep that pH lower. So we looked at 3 different products, BRANDT Indicate 5, Choice Trio, and a spray grade AMS. Very common water conditioning products. And what we're trying to do there is take some of the hardness out and look at lowering the pH. And when you look across here, you'll probably notice that BRANDT Indicate 5 is a different color. It's kind of pink. What makes that product unique is as you add it, when you get to the proper pH, the water changes color. So you know you've reached that right pH. The other two you've got to kind of check and monitor. And as you pull water from different sources, right? I go to the well at Grandma's and then I go over to the home farm and pull water. Those sources may be different pHs. So the BRANDT Indicate 5 makes it easy because it'll change color when you're the right one. The others you got to kind of monitor and check. So let's see how they did. So here you'll see when we put in the Versamax, we raised our pH to 8. When we added the BRANDT Indicate 5, lowered the pH to 5. Choice Trio lowered the pH. Now the AMS lowers the pH slightly, but it does a little more in the water conditioning standpoint. So you'll see here we saw a yield increase out of all of them. Now over the last 3 years, the BRANDT Indicate 5 in soybeans has actually become PFR proven. It's been very consistent to show that lowering that pH of the water helps improve the effectiveness of our foliar nutrition at R1. But some of you are kind of thinking about, okay, multi-location, here's what we did, but what about my area? PFR proven, the BRANDT, but as we jump into different PFR locations, it changes. Here you'll see in Kentucky, the BRANDT Indicate 5 still came to the top. The AMS wasn't quite as profitable. So there it shows their water source. It's more important to get the pH right than it is to actually condition the water. Central Illinois, the AMS jumps to the top. So it's thinking about the fact that doing something to condition your water is important, but what does your water need? As we move through Southern Illinois, again, the BRANDT Indicate 5 comes to the top. We look at the other ones, not quite as profitable there. Ohio, same thing. The BRANDT Indicate 5, the AMS, very strong. So know your water source. How does that affect? In Iowa, this was interesting. We had a huge yield increase to lowering the pH of that water using the Indicate 5 product. But again, saw yield increases out of them. Minnesota, the same way. We go north, a different water source. So again, up there, the AMS comes to the top. Very important to condition that water. Take some of the hardness out of it. So start to understand, hey, you need to condition your water, but find out what your water needs. Now we're going to talk about fungicide additives. And I think this is kind of interesting. As we talk about nutrients, you talk about N, P, and K, what's our yield limiting factor. In PFR, we've talked a lot about sulfur the last few years. We said sulfur is that next yield limiting factor. Well, now we figured out sulfur. As we move on, could boron be the next one? So here we look at soil tests out of Great Lakes Labs in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And what they're looking at from 1996 till now, the black dotted line shows that the pH of the soils is dropping. Almost 65% of the soils they test are deficient in boron. Now it doesn't take a lot of boron, but boron is critical in pollination, kernel set, moving nutrients from the plant to the grain, especially during grain fill. And you say, well, what's happened here over these last years? Well, as we go back and we talk about sulfur and we talk about the Clean Air Act, we pulled sulfur out of the atmosphere, Little did we know there was a lot of boron in that too. So when we removed that, we also lost boron. Now this chart actually shows the uptake curve here for corn, but it tells the story. Early on in the season, there's a huge need for boron. A lot of that comes out of the soil as we mineralize, so it's available. Then it flattens off, and we hit the grain fill time frame, and it takes off again, as we need that boron to move nutrients to that grain. So what happened in PFR? Well, here in our 2020 multi-locations, you'll see the Smart B-Mo product and this Harvest More Urea Mate, both boron products, show a yield increase in corn. We also see down here something to keep an eye on, this Correct and the BRANDT Smart KB, that in the future, potassium acetates may be something else we look at. The first year data is intriguing to me, but really I want to focus on the boron. So here we look at boron. Now this is corn and soybeans. But we look at Boron Plus, this Feast product, Harvest More Urea Mate, all boron products. We look for the pattern in PFR. So in corn, they're all at tassel time. So that tells me it's actually PFR proven to apply boron at tassel time in corn. We jump to soybeans at R3 when we're making that fungicide application. That Harvest More Urea Mate product is PFR proven. So again, as we start grain fill, boron is critical. We actually did some other testing. Is that grain fill at R3 the right time? We tested at R1 and R3 and combined them, saw a yield increase every time. So we know boron's important. The combination at R1 and R3 was the most profitable, but again, you're making two applications. So if you're making a foliar nutrition pass at R1, there's a value to add in boron. If you're making a fungicide pass at R3, there's a value to add in boron. So as we're looking at spraying for profit, how do we increase profit? We're already making an application, an easy addition. And again, you think about, well, what about my area? As we look at this video here being across a large area, we think about the BRANDT Smart B-Mo, again in Kentucky, was a big return. We jump all the way up to Minnesota, again, adding boron, another huge return to those areas. So across our whole marketing area, there's an advantage to adding boron to your fungicide. What about adjuvants? So we think about making this pass, how do I make those products be as effective as we can? So here we looked at a product called BRANDT Super 7. It's a multifunctional penetrating surfactant. It effectively actually reduces spray drift by improving our spray pattern. It reduces our tank water pH, which we talked about in conditioning is important, and it's a buffering agent that helps concentrate and get those nutrients into the plant. So here you'll see over the last 3 years in soybeans, it's become PFR proven with a very good return. Here's some of our multi-location data. You'll see this last year about a bushel increase, $11 per acre. Anything we can do to add some money back into our pockets. So again, we looked at this across a lot of locations. In Kentucky, very consistent, a nice return of adding that surfactant in, or the adjuvant in. Central Illinois, the same thing, not quite as big a return as Kentucky, but then we jump into Southern Illinois, another big jump. What about in Iowa? Very consistent return on investment. So as we think about all this, how do we, in a little bit, wrap it up and make this profitable fungicide pass? Well, one is we got to have the right product. We want to target diseases that are present in your field. That's the first reason we're applying fungicides. You need to select products that have multiple modes of action. Growth stage, you've got to target R3. Time of day, early in the morning, dew on the leaves for foliar nutrition and fungicides is more effective. And the carrier rate, 20 gallons per water, we're going to get very good coverage. Now you go, wow, Steve, that's a lot of stuff. How do I keep track of it? Well, now we're looking at integrating PFR and FARMserver together. Many of you know FARMserver's our digital ag platform. We can do yield maps, planting prescriptions, ROI maps, a lot of functions in there. But there's something coming this year that I'm really excited about. We're doing growth stage models. Now I know this is kind of a busy screen here as you look at this, but what I get excited about is if you have a planter monitor and you're collecting data, you can upload it, automatically fills this. If you don't, you can manually go in and enter your planting date, your maturity group, and your target moisture. And it'll calculate based on GDUs, growth stages throughout the season, and match them up to rainfall and temperature. So what's going to happen is you're going to get a notification on your phone, or through a text or through an email that says, hey, the back 40 is going to emerge in 10 days. Gives you about a 10-day leeway. Grandma's 80 is going to be at R3 in 10 days. So that helps you scout your fields, time when you need to scout them, and really, with the high gas prices, right, it's going to save you money because you can drive to those specific fields and know what you're looking for. But here's what's also exciting about this. When you get your notification that Grandma's back 80s at R3, it's going to pop up and say, hey, at R3, it is PFR proven to apply a fungicide. Check out this video on application. Check out this video on how to apply, agronomy briefs, PFR data. It's going to help you understand why it's PFR proven at that time and then what to do. So overall, I'm excited about what this will do for you. So at this time, I want to thank you for being a part of the talk. Spraying for profit. If you have questions, be sure to reach out to your local Beck's representative, dealer, seed advisor, agronomist. We would love to help you out. Thanks and have a great day.